Welcome back to the Chasing XP Developer Roundtable. This is the second part of episode 1. If you missed part 1, there's a link down below. So you guys both talked a lot about having people find exploits or bugs in your game. Do you guys think that as indie devs, you need more playtesters, more Q&A done for your products before they come out?
I do. I mean, that's part of, even though I'm charging $4.99 for my game, because I'm hoping, well, if they're going to be part of this, $4.99 is what you pay for the entire game, even up to its final. So you get it for that. But I'm also, if you're going to be doing that and you want to be a part of testing and all that stuff, then you really want to do it. And because I don't have anybody to test around here. I've got like one friend that he'll do testing for me and we'll be honest about it. So other than that, I'm kind of relying on the Steam community or just players in general to go ahead and purchase the game and take almost like you're almost like you're investing in it. So your investment means I want to say something if you need to. And I have had a few do that. I'm like, that's great. I have had some that have brought up questions and I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen because that's not the type of game it is, or I may not have ever have that feature in the game type of thing. So
those are always hard to say when people are into it and they're requesting certain things. It's like, oh boy, we're either A, that's like not exactly the vision for it, or B, we're a tiny team and we cannot afford to do all these random suggestions that people have. For us, testing is obviously important, but it's, I don't know, it's sort of, in a way, it's better being a small team because there's less to be broken. Like a triple game is thousands of people working on it for years, right? There's so much that can be broken about it. For us, I'm the only one writing code, so even if you're one person writing code, you probably know like a month later, it's basically a different person looking at that code, even if it's just yourself, because you don't even remember what you're doing. So it's easy enough to write bugs as one person, but it's at least confined in that way.
You know who to blame.
Yeah. So testing is a little simpler in that sense. But like I said, for us, just at least being able to watch people play it on Twitch, get the unfiltered responses and stuff is a great way for us to test, even if we can't go to events and stuff.
As far as Corona, like people playing it on Twitch, do you just have like people that start to play it, or it's just word of mouth, or?
So I mentioned we did the Steam demo festival thing along with the Kickstarter. So both of those things drew a lot of people to the demo because we linked to the demo from Kickstarter. And then on a Steam festival, a bunch of just streamers were just going there to play random games. So
gotcha.
Yeah, we would get. I also just splattered the internet when the Kickstarter was going up. Anyone who looked like they might be into a game like Beacon Pines,
you got emails
to. Yeah. So we got some traction from that and some traction just naturally from Steam and Kickstarter.
Gotcha.
So you guys have both had your successes in crowdfunding. Do you guys want to talk about how that went for you? Like emotionally, business-wise, whatnot?
Since the only Kickstarter that I had was successful, because I did two, and the first one was I made an art book of all the stuff that I've done so far, animations and backgrounds and whatnot. So that was like a $5,000 Kickstarter because I wanted to be able to buy a couple of programs I needed. Like I wanted to update my TV Paint program and I don't know, just buy some other stuff. So it was kind of almost like I was given that I was going to reach that amount for, because I was offering books to everybody that supported. So, but then when I did the second one, which was, I even had a demo of the game, but in retrospect, it was such a shit demo that I probably wouldn't have supported me if I didn't know me and was looking at it, because it didn't really do anything. It's like I was, and from what I understand, from some people said that I shot too low. I was shooting for like 8,000, and I didn't really know what to shoot for, so I just picked a number like that. And the response I got was, "You shot too low," and because of Kickstarter's history of scammers and games that never get done and just whatnot, that they see a low price, they see a low tier, and it's like, nah, that's not going to do anything. He doesn't think much of his game, so he should have shot higher. It's like, damn it. But I still don't think it would have been successful if I went higher. I think there was too many things involved. So awesome on the one that was successful. In the end of the one that was not, it was like, well, whatever. I tried. I'm not doing it again. So
Yeah, it's stressful for sure. That does make that's an interesting. It's interesting to hear that, because that makes sense that, like, yeah, you shot too low, and because there is a lot of psychology that goes into Kickstarters, because a lot of people have been burned
a lot.
burned by Kickstarters. So that was one thing. Yeah, we tried to go out of our way to show that this thing is. We've been developing it for 2 years. We've spent so much time on the demo, and at one point, I talked to all these people about, like, well, what should we do for the Kickstarter leading up to it and throughout it? People who've had successful Kickstarters and stuff like that. I got a lot of advice, and one of them, like, right before, like, the couple days before we launched, after I'd spent, such a long time making this demo as good as possible, was like, oh, and a lot of people say you just shouldn't put a demo on the Kickstarter page. And I was like, but you don't know how long and how much effort we put into the demo. Like, I don't think this is just what some people would put up as a sort of throwaway demo.
yeah.
And I'm glad we did, because it is, I think, one of the big reasons for the Kickstarter success is because we had a lot of really good, like, YouTube and Twitch people playing the demo. We also timed it to line up with the Steam Festival, which in hindsight was
very smart.
It was smart, but it was also super stressful, because it just doubled the work I was doing in the first week of the Kickstarter, which is already an overwhelming amount of work. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that I would outright do it again, because it is such a ordeal. It's stressful just by its nature, the sort of make or break nature of it, and just all the work that goes on top of it. Sort of both made the rest of Beacon Pines development possible and derailed it for like 2 months, because you have no time to spend on the game when you're doing Kickstarter. But it went well. So given that, I'm happy we did it. If it had gone poorly, it would have been pretty rough, because we spent so much time on it.
I'm sure one bad Kickstarter is all you need to take a moment to yourself and realize, I fucked up.
Yeah, but it's interesting. When I was researching other Kickstarters beforehand, there have been a couple of Kickstarter games that failed and then just had another go at it. Same game a year or two later, and then were successful. Obviously, they did a lot to get to that point then the second time around, but man, some people really have it in them to.
Yeah.
I know.
I just spoke to a board game designer who had that same issue. He released a game on Kickstarter. It did terrible. It didn't reach its goal. He had to cancel it a day before it ended. And then he took that time to work on his marketing materials, do more play tests of the game, get a playable prototype out there, do some videos on how the game works. Then he relaunched it, and it was a great success, and he did fantastic for it. But like, maybe people don't realize how much time it takes to make a really good Kickstarter project. Because I look at a lot of Kickstarters for my day-to-day job in general, and like making sure you have the right materials, the right explanation of your product, the nice art, the graphics, and the description. A nice video even is really good to have, as well as like clear, concise goals and tiers for your backers to pledge to. All of that makes a huge difference, and sometimes your average consumer who is getting into doing Kickstarters might not realize how big of a jump that really is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's like that whole thing with like that elevator pitch. It's like you have to be able to explain your game within a few lines, because that captures people, and it's amazing how hard it is to do that, because all you want to do is explain everything. But at the same time, it's like, and that's kind of where the Kickstarter thing goes. It's like, you're right. It's got to be this perfect presentation in a nice little box with minimal words to some degree, so they could just be like, oh, cool, I like that. Now let me play the demo, or let me play this movie and watch the person and read more about it. It's like, you never know too what someone's gonna like or not like. It's like, it's just, it's just crazy. Games on Kickstarter is just, it's so annoying that so many people sullied that relationship to some degree. And I hope it comes back, but it just makes it hard for people like us that have something legitimate to present and say, here, back me. And, you're going to be part of something amazing.
So what part of your respective games did you obsess over the most? Like what feature or idea or concept that you just like had to like nail down and spend hours working on?
My backgrounds. Everything, I mean, everything's obviously the animation I will spend a lot of time on to get right, but when it comes to the backgrounds, I like stress over everything, and it takes me so long to just get one background done. And it has nothing, I mean, yes, all the cross hatching and whatnot, that takes time, but it's more of building the overall composition of it. Like right now, I'm drawing establishing the theme of the boss layer, and since that part's in kind of like a cave, I am dealing with trying to compose rocks in a way that it doesn't feel like you're sitting in a sandbox with some playable rocks, and they have to be kind of big. But Jesus, man, it's been days that I've been redoing the composition and getting to this and getting to that, and I'm like, but I will hyper stress over that. It's more than anything else, it's the backgrounds, because I don't, even though I know how to draw them, but at the same time, every time I begin one, I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this? I'll make it through and things will just kind of fall into place, and I'll be like, cool, I did that, and let's go into the next one. Shit, how am I going to do this one? Those are the things right now that I just hyper stress out on.
Yeah, it's interesting because you being the artist are hyper focused on that stuff, and me being sort of music and audio person, in addition to the programming. But the music for me is very personal, and so I do hyper focus on that, and the audio too. The thing that I wish I didn't spend so much time on, but still will probably be spending a lot more time on, and already have, is the little audio beeps boops that play when characters are talking to each other. Oh my god, I've spent like weeks on those. Every character has like a different tone and voice and pace and speed and pitch and volume changes and like the ups and downs of how they talk. I don't know why I spend so much time in this, but it just feels necessary because it happens so much in the game. Like,
I think it is like necessary because I think those are the little things that like people don't notice, but they subconsciously pick up on. And if the pacing isn't right, then they're not into it. But you're focused on making the pacing correct so that you're giving them all the info. They just don't know it, but they feel good. So
yeah, especially with sound effects, and at least certain sound effects, if they're not like the primary things that the player is focused on, you almost, the better you do with it, the less people recognize it. It's just adding to this atmosphere, but you take it out and the game's garbage. Like, it's crazy when you put in sound effects how much it just feels more alive.
Yeah,
I think at least for that particular concept of the I guess the dialect of the character. I don't know what word you can attribute to that, but like it really makes it a more memorable experience to have that versus just blank dialogue if you don't have the full voiceover. Because like we've all played Animal Crossing. I know my villagers all sound different, and that's great. I love it. But even like when I was a kid playing like Banjo-Kazooie, every single character had their own unique way of talking, and I loved it. It was great. And those are things that I memorize and I cherish as an adult when I played those games of how they all spoke.
Yeah. I actually did a lot of research of. I was surprised looking at all the old games how much they did that too. Like every character has a different little sound effect for their voice and stuff like that. It was a very common thing back then. And so I looked at a lot of those old games and I was just struggling so hard trying to think of how to do this right in Beacon Pines.
I don't know. That when you said that, I was like, man, there's a lot of really great games I played that have that, whatever you want to call it, dialect feature where the character says something. And when you play a game that doesn't have it, it just feels very empty during dialogue scenes.
Yeah. There's some magic to it.
There's magic to it. So rather than ask you guys if you guys have advice for aspiring developers, one of those canned phrases, I want to ask you guys, what part of the development process did you severely misjudge for difficulty or time endured or whatever it might be?
The engine, because I do absolutely no programming. I'm utilizing the Corgi engine, no relation whatsoever, and it's basically a lot of like the programmer I have now. He has to work within that because my game is entirely built on that. So I could imagine, and you would do the same thing. You look at how everything's built, and you're like, what? But obviously, somebody if you're looking at the language that somebody else is communicating with, it's all code, but at the same time, it's all writing from the English language or whatever. You're all writing a different book, but the same concept. And in the early stages before I even was able to get into Unity, I made all these animations. I made animations of Lulu, like how she was going to look when she left the ground, what she was going to do in the air when she connected with the ground, how she was going to do. I mean, I animated all of these different things. Get into the engine, actually start moving it around. I'm like, oh crap, I can't do this thing where she leaves the ground. It's got to be like all that play responsiveness. It's
got to be snappy. Yeah.
Oh, it does. And I'm like, okay, 75 animations down the drain, but now I know. And so it's really nice to be able to go create these animations, immediately dump it into the engine and go, how does that feel? So, but yeah, the engine was a big slap in the face of like, oh shit, this is for real.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, coming from a programming background. That wasn't the thing that trips me up the most. For me, it's really just, I was going to say especially for Beacon Pines, but then I realized it's really been for most games that I've made. It's the design, because everyone has game ideas and they all sound awesome in your head. And then you need to make that a thing that other people understand and enjoy, and that you even understand or enjoy. I spent like over a year probably prototyping stuff before I landed on some of the ideas for Beacon Pines. And they're all just ideas that sound really cool. And then you prototype it, it just doesn't feel right. It's like, well, yeah, in my head it felt right, but then obviously that's not a real thing. And there's all kinds of magic that you do in your head to trick yourself into thinking an idea is just going to work and it's cool. But they rarely ever just work and are cool. So you have to spend a lot of time prototyping stuff, throwing it away. And then, yeah, hopefully eventually you land on something. And it took a long time for Beacon Pines to get to that point, but luckily it finally did sort of click.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because the only game design expertise that I have is D&D stuff, like I said, and you don't get to play test it like 9 times out of 10. Yeah. Like when I sit down, I do my session prep. I roll in on Saturday and I'm like, I just pray to God this works well.
Yeah. When I was talking about trolling, people troll dungeon masters more than anybody. Like, and now I will do this thing that I'm not supposed to do.
It's either it comes down to trolling or it comes down to them questioning my knowledge as a person and refusing to listen to me just tell them no. For a great example, I had the players get in a boat and sail to an island. And I was like, all right, cool. This island is X amount of miles away. It takes you X amount of time to get there. And my player just pops out and goes, no. Because he sails. He sails as a hobby. And he's like, well, actually, in a boat with this size and this distance, going at this speed, we'd get there in this amount of time. And I was like, fuck you. That's not how it works.
Your face.
You're a dwarf warlock. Get in the boat.
It's things like that where, although I love the game and it keeps me on my toes every time I play, it's just like I don't get to play test this. I get to write it, I get to read it, I get to hope that it works, and then go back to it again if I ever bring this idea back around. Most recently being I tried doing a chase in D&D, and I don't know if you guys have played a lot of D&D. I know you said you do play some one shots here and there. I don't know if you have it all, Matt T. I guess we'll go with that one. Yeah. But the chase mechanics that come in the Dungeon Master's Guide are interesting, to say the least. It's basically you roll a d20 at the end of your turn to determine if there is an obstacle for the next person going in the turn order. And then things of like, distance moved, so you can still do melee attacks on the person you're chasing and whatnot, and sling spells, things like that. And in my head, I'm like, all right, cool. I'll have them just run around for a little while, do some cool obstacles, and then after either the good guys or the bad guys do X amount of like good rolls, we'll end the scene there. But my players instead are like, well, actually, hold on. If I wild shape into a wolf, I get more move speed. I can move farther and catch up with him. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter if you catch up with him because we're not worried about that. You're just chasing him. He's like, no, I want to stop him now. And I was like, that's not how that works. Just let me have my fun.
Yeah, I've never been a dungeon master, but I feel like so much of your plans probably just go out the window, and it's at some point it's like, all right, I'm just gonna give us a starting point, and we'll go from there.
I've recently switched up my style because normally when I write my session prep, I'll do like a bunch of dialogue, a bunch of world building. I'll throw some puzzles. I'll throw some real cool like lore stuff in there, and I have to hope my players go in that direction in the exact order I write it out. With our most recent session, I took a different approach where I just write out a location with X amount of NPCs, a very broad goal, and some things that happen in the area, regardless of whether the players are acting or not acting with the plot, and just throw it at them and improv the entire time. And it worked so much better, except for the chase scene, because I was still mad with the chase scene. But it felt so much more natural and fluid to not have to worry about my players going in the exact same route that you guys were saying earlier of like, oh, they didn't talk to this NPC, now they won't get the information they need, or they are trying to jump the wrong way. No, I'm just having them just fuck around in the world for a little while, and eventually they'll come back around to it because they'll start dropping in more hints to make it better for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the time I've got. If you guys have anything you want to share, go ahead and share it now if you guys want to.
Sure. I mean, I mentioned Beacon Pines is the game I'm working on. That's what I would point people to. There is at Beacon Pines on Twitter, and beaconpines.com will get you to the website. So, yeah.
And mine is a crookedheart.com. A crookedheart.com will take you to the WordPress blog. And you can find a Crooked Heart on Steam. Just look for the little corgi. Wonderful love. And the Twitter is at Matt Tardiff. Just triple T. So
awesome. Thank you very much, guys, for coming out. Thank you, viewers, for watching our very first roundtable. And we'll catch you guys next time. But with our most... Allergies suck. With our most recent session... well, that's all the... Wow, I fucked that line up again. That's all the time I've got. Hey, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to our channel.